Hello everyone and welcome to this tutorial video. And in this tutorial video we'll be looking at the HackTheBox machine called Hawk. First things first, we do an Nmap scan. And the IP address is 10.10.10.102. I've already done this to save time, so if I do a list, I've got it as on a file called scan. So I can do cat scan and have a look at what we found. So the Nmap scan revealed we've got port 21, an FTP service running, got port 22 SSH, and port 80 also running an Apache HTTP service. And then also we've got this H2 database HTTP console running on port 8082. So the first thing I did for this box was to have a look at the port 80 because it appears we have, if you have a look at the result of the scan, we've got things like a changelog.txt, robots.txt, got all the directories embedded into this. So some interesting stuff to look at. So a quick look in here reveals Drupal, as we can see here, powered by Drupal. And like you know, Drupal, there's a lot of exploits. So if I do a search on Drupal exploits, there's a lot of exploit lately that has to do with Drupal. You can look at exploit DB, and a lot of exploits as recent as 2018. However, on this particular occasion, on this CTF, none of this exploit actually worked. I tried a very famous one written in Ruby, and that didn't appear to work as well. So it appears to be a rabbit hole. So the first thing I had to look at was to look at the FTP service. So I do an FTP 10.10.10.102 and anonymous login, and we get into a directory, and we see there's a directory called messages, so we can cd into that, and list appears to be nothing. But if you do a list in order to reveal any hidden files, we found a file here called Drupal txt.enc. So I attempt to get this file and download it onto our local machine and exit the FTP shell. If I do a list.la, you can see the file here. And one thing I just did straight away was to rename this file as, name this file and just call it cipher.txt.enc. And this appears to be an encrypted file. We can confirm that by looking at what kind of file it is. And it reveals it's an OpenSSL encrypted data with salted password base64 encoded. If we cut the file, we could see the base64 encoded file, details of the file. So a quick search on decrypting OpenSSL. If I can type files, and I think this one is a good one, and explains different ways in which encryption, and you can encrypt using OpenSSL, the syntax, and also decrypt. So in order to encrypt, you can use OpenSSL has got different commands, but you can use an encryption, has to use an algorithm to encrypt because of salt, the input file, and then the output file, which is has the extension ENC. But because this is base64 encoded, we could see here you have to use the option A for encryption, and to decrypt, option A also has to be included, but also option D. So this gives us a clue on the syntax to use and also the flags when we're trying to decrypt the file we've got. So I wrote a script which is called decrypt.sh. So let's have a look at the file. And here is just a simple file. So we've got this OpenSSL list commands, and we're trying to find the cipher. So we're trying to find the cipher used in this to encrypt that file, and then we say for X in ciphers, perform this. If it's able to decrypt the output, then break out of the loop and exit. So let's have a look at how this works. So here we could say the input file is called cipher.txt, and then the output file is called decipher.txt. So let's try to run the script, see what happens. So it says enter AES decryption password. I don't know what the password. I click on enter, and it's suggesting this is probably the password. So I wrote another file, which is let's have a look at list. I wrote another file called open.sh in order to use to try to find the password, to brute force the password of this file. So here, initially, I used the suggested one by the initial script, which was 128, but that didn't work. So I went straight away to use 256, and that appears to do the trick. So here, we tell the script to use a while loop to read every line in our dictionary file and try to decrypt using the syntax. We use the pass flag. So we can confirm this if you go on to man OpenSSL, and we can see all the commands. So list commands and different flags and options we can use. Okay, so for the different flags, so I'm going to look at this again. You see, we could use the list command. So OpenSSL command, and then list command to list. So list standard command, digest command, cipher commands. So for instance, if we do OpenSSL list, the cipher commands, we can see the list of algorithms OpenSSL uses, or encryption algorithms used to encrypt a file. So this was the one the file suggested, but that didn't work. So I went for the other one because sometimes there could be some sort of collision between encryption algorithms using an OpenSSL. So I assume that was the case. So this runs through the file, tries to perform the decryption using the password in the file. If the return value is equal to 0, that means if it's successful, then echo the candidate password and break out of the loop. Else, continue the loop until it runs through all of the values in the word list, which is rocku.exe. So actually, if I want to modify that, say no. Okay, so we can run this. And we can see the password here is saying the password is friends. Okay, so clear screen list, decipher.txt, and we'll cut the file, decipher.txt. We get a message to Daniel following the password for the portal pencil scanner 123, pencil keyboard scanner 123. Please let us know if the portal is ready. So my assumption was this might be the password for the Drupal portal. So using admin and paste the password in, we're able to log in as admin. So we logged in as admin. We go to modules and try to enable PHP filter. That's enabled. Add content. Create a basic page. So I could do locate web shells. Web shell. I have one here in my tools folder. So copy that. Clear. Nautilus. Oops, I shouldn't have run that in terminal. Open display. Yep. So we have to modify this script, and I'm going to use my IP address. If config turn 0, my IP address is 10.10.10.15.138. Modify this, paste that in, save the file, copy the content of the file, copy, go into Drupal, create a page, hello world, paste, PHP code, then we could clear a listener. I think it was 9003. Save, and we get a shell. So ID, you can see, we're going to use a logged in as Daniel. But if we do ID, we can find out we are www.data. So we can say which Python, to find out Python is installed. Python is not, so we try Python 3. And we can see Python 3 is installed. Try to get a PTY shell, import pty .spawn and bin bash. What did I do wrong? That appears right. Oh, Python 3. Python 3. So I'm just going to copy this. Okay, so there we go. So if we do a cat etc password, we see there's a user called Daniel, and Daniel has got a home directory here. So we can cd into this directory, cd, paste. Okay, and if we do a list, we find the user flag. So wc-c user.txt reveals the 33 characters, or 32 with the new line for the characters of the MD5 hash in the user flag. But how do we then become a user Daniel? So my first thought was probably Daniel, because we found, if you remember from the enumeration we looked at, the initial enumeration we looked at showed that port 22 is actually open. So my best bet was cat scan. My best bet was Daniel probably has a username or password rather that I can use to SSH. So my first initial thought was the password might have been used to create the Drupal web page. So Drupal configuration. So we could do Drupal, do a quick search, configuration file. And having a quick look, Drupal 7 guide shows that the settings.php is where database credentials. You see here it says Drupal what the database is called database credentials to access the database is located in settings.php. So we can try to find if that actually exists. So locate settings.php. There's a file called settings.php, and try to cut this file. Cut the file. And try to see if there's any credentials. So quick scan through. And we can see here we've got a username called Drupal and a password called Drupal for Hawk. So my first thought was to cd hawk, and then we could try to log in SSH Daniel at 10.10.10.102. Prompts for password, pay Drupal for Hawk, and we logged in. So this drops us into a Python shell. So what we could do is we could get rid of this, since we're logged in as Daniel. We could get rid of the www.data shell. You can see it's logged us into as a Python. So we could do 1 plus 1, for instance, and that should give us 2. So showing a Python shell. So we could do Python, could drop ourselves into a shell, import OS, semicolon, os.system, and bin bash. Okay, and we can see with Daniel, we should be able to clear screen now. So list, we actually in Daniel's directory. So how do we then do privilege escalation? Privilege escalation, if you remember, we found a port 8082, but it's saying something about H2 console or H2 database server from the initial scan. And here it says, sorry, remote connections are not allowed. So my first thought was, let's see what services are running as root. So we can do ps-aux, grep root, and we can see straight away here, the user root is actually running a bin command, running this, is actually running this H2 Java file. So we could do a quick search using Google. And try to look for H2 database engine, I think. And we can see the H2 database engine is actually written in Java. So I tried to see if there's an exploit for that. And there's a vulnerability. I think there's actually one on ExploitDB. Yeah. Okay, and if you look closely, there was a blog written by the author of this exploit that explains how you could actually get command injection by having access to the console. It was actually explained in this blog. So how do we then go about getting access to this, since we do not have access to the H2 console and it's being run by root? If we try to list L, we'll get a permission denied to this file. Okay, so we don't have access. So my first thought was, then we could do SSH tunneling in order to get to that port and then forward the port to our local port. So the command for that, so if I clear screen, list cat commands.txt. Okay, so we could do SSH through Daniel. Okay, then we port forward 802 to our local host on port 802. So that was the command I used in order to make that work. So we go on back to our terminal here, exit, and exit the Python shell. Then SSH in again as Daniel. Prompted for the password, Drupal for Hawk. We logged in. And then if we go on to 127.0.0.1, which is our local host on port 8082, we should be able to get through to the console. And there we go. Okay, so my first thought was, how do we, the URL database here, if we click on connect, we are unable to connect because the username and password is wrong. So changing this to 10.10.10.102 and clicking connect, we should be able to get access to the database. Yeah, and then we're logged in. So according to this blog post, we need to execute this first. Copy that. The console, paste that in, run. Come on. This should work. I think I had difficulties doing this a couple of times. I had to revert the box. And it's ain't able to connect. So have we lost the shell? Yeah, we lost the shell there. We might try this again. Drupal for Hawk. Log back in and try to do this again. Turn on 1 and 2 connect. We logged in, paste that in, run. Be able to execute code. Go back in here and try to use the call shell execute to execute more code. Paste that in, run, and we see we are root. So here we can actually do a list command, and you can see we got the root file. If we do wc.c root.txt, run the command, we can see the characters. But how can we actually get ourselves a shell? So what I did was go to Pentest Monkey, reverse shell, cheat sheet, and just copy this bash one, copy that, new window, and if config on 0, we are 15.138, so nano shell.sh 15.138, change this 10.10 15.138, I just change this to 9002. In bash, so start python.m simple http server port 80. Okay, and then we'll do a wget. So we could do wget http, put in our IP address, /shell, that file called shell.sh. Yep, shell.sh, and run. Yep, that's successfully completed. If we do a list, we should have the shell, we should have the file there. So we have the file called shell.sh. So we can end this now and clear screen. And if we do netcat.nvlp 9002, we'll put that there. And then we try to execute the shell script, which should be bash shell.sh, run, and there we go, we root. So we get a shell as root on the box. I could have used the reverse shell code and put it in, but for some reason I think this didn't work when I tried it. So I just decided to download the file, put the shell script, or the reverse shell into a script, and then execute it from here. If we do a list now, we can see we've got the root.txt file and wc.c root.txt. We got the 32-bit 32 characters of the MD5 hash plus new line, and also we got our shell, so we can remove that. Shell.sh. So we're root. So hopefully you enjoyed that. I actually enjoyed this box because you had to do a lot of digging, a lot of writing your own scripts to decrypt the initial file, going through Drupal for the initial foothold, searching for the user's password in order to SSH in, and actually going through this to be SSH channeling. So there's a lot of things to learn and a lot of hurdles to maneuver before you get boot. So hopefully you enjoy that, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.